Well, good morning. Welcome to Debbie's Back Porch. I've been craving cheese Danish, and I had some puff pastry in the fridge, so I made some. When you buy a Danish at the bakery, the dough is just a little bit different, but puff pastry works really well for a Danish, so that's what I did. Here are the ingredients. You can pause and write them down. And hey, while you're paused, that'd be a good time to give us a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you click the little bell at the top right, you'll get a notice when I make new videos about twice a week. Now this is really pretty simple. I've got some vanilla here. I've got one package of cream cheese, 8 ounces. See, it's really soft. I'm making mine with Splenda. You can make yours with sugar. If you use sugar, you want to use a little more sugar. This is a 1/4 cup of Splenda. You'd use 1/2 cup of sugar. Then I've got a lemon here, and I'm just going to use the zest from the lemon. And I've got some fresh nutmeg here, and you know, don't forget that. It really makes a difference. Just a little pinch of salt. And then I've got 2 eggs over here to the right that I'm going to separate. I'll use the yolks here, and I'll save the whites for an egg wash. So basically we just dump everything in the bowl. There's the cream cheese and the 2 egg yolks and the Splenda or sugar and the vanilla, and I'm going to put in about a teaspoonful. I'm sorry, I'm just going to guesstimate here, but it's about a teaspoonful. You may use a different flavoring if you want. If you have almond, you might try that. But I keep vanilla and I like it the best. You probably do want to use a mixer for this. You can do it by hand. It's a little hard to beat when you start, but I have this little hand mixer, so I'm just going to use it. Just a note here, the lemon zest and the nutmeg are not absolutely necessary, but they bring so much to the flavor. You really want to try them. And if you don't have a fresh lemon, you could put just a drop or 2 of lemon juice, but not too much. It'll make it too liquid. That was just a little pinch of salt. And then we're going to add just a bit of the lemon zest. And you know this, I'm sure, but I'll mention it. When you're getting your lemon zest, be sure you don't get any of the white part of the lemon peel. You just want the yellow part. The white part will make it bitter. So I just run that over my little microplane here. And this is about a 1/2 teaspoonful. It doesn't take a whole lot. Now the nutmeg. And I really recommend that you use fresh nutmeg. It's pretty easy to use. I'm not putting a whole lot in here. Yeah, let me give that another try. It slipped. And you know the difference in fresh nutmeg and the ground nutmeg. It's difficult to explain, but a little fresh nutmeg really brings a lot of flavor. I'm going to get down in there a little bit closer, let you see how much I put in. Not a lot, but it brings so much flavor. Then I'm just going to finish mixing this together, and then I will set it in the fridge while I prepare the puff pastry so that it'll be nice and firm when I get ready to put it together. First, I'm going to show you the texture of it. If you can see, that's not at all runny, and it'll stand up to baking. So I'm set this in the fridge, and then I'll be back. Now you can use grocery store puff pastry for this, but I didn't. This is puff pastry I made a couple days ago, and I put it in the fridge. And by the way, at the end of the video, there will be a link to the video where I made this puff pastry. Now this is about 2.5 pounds, and if you go to the grocery store and buy it, it's going to be about a pound. It'll be 2 approximately 8-ounce pieces. So I want to cut this into 5 servings, and I measured it so that I can make some even portions. I need to put a little flour here because it's been in the fridge and it's a little moist. And this is kind of short and fat, so I want to spread it out a little bit so that I can measure out some even portions. And I'm going to flour it pretty well. And then I'll just beat it down to spread it out a little bit so that it's long enough for me to actually measure it and cut it. And you always want to cut it across the fold. Now 5 portions is too much for me today. I'm actually going to bake with 2 portions, and I'm going to put 3 back in the freezer, and this will keep up to 3 months in the freezer. Now of course, if you've bought yours, you don't have to do all this. You'll just start rolling. And this recipe is going to take 1 8-ounce portion. And you know, I'm using my tape measure here because I had help in the kitchen this week, and now I can't find my dough scrape, which has measurements on it, which is what I usually use. So I'm marking this off into 5 even pieces. And you do want to do this by measurement and not weight, because you don't want to have to cut any of the pieces more than once, because we worked really hard to put all those nice little layers in there, and we want to keep them. So when you cut it, you want to try to cut it straight down and move your knife as little as possible. You don't want to saw back and forth. Just go straight down. And I'm also being careful because I don't want to cut my Silpat baking sheet under here. So there you go. That's 1 portion. There comes the second portion. And no, they won't be exact, but this particular recipe was a little over 2.5 pounds. So it'll be close enough. So let me show you as I'm cutting this. I'm never sure what you can see on the camera, but I think you can see all those wonderful layers in there. You really should try to make this. It's really not hard. Time consuming, but not hard. So I've individually wrapped 3 sections here, and I'm going to put this in the freezer, keep up to 3 months. This one is destined for bacon and brie pastry for dinner. And this one is for our cheese Danish today. So I'm going to flour it really well. And I won't show you the whole rolling out process. It does take a little bit because you want to roll it out really, really thinly. And it's easier for me to do it. This will make 4. It's easier for me to do it 2 at a time, because when you start rolling this out, it's going to get huge. So what I'm aiming for here is 4 6x6 pastries. And I'll tell you now, I end up with closer to 7x7. And you could probably get it to 9x9, but we're going to stop at that. So I'm measuring it off again. And just because it's so much easier to do it 2 and 2, because this gets huge, and it actually would get bigger than my board here if I were doing the whole thing. So let me cut that in half. I'll measure it again. And I really do miss my dough scrape. We're going to have a treasure hunt here in the kitchen sometime later, looking for my dough scrape. So I'm going to show you rolling out on 1/2 of this, because you know, basically it's just rolling, but there are a few tricks that might make it more helpful for you. And I'm going to roll it out, and I'll roll in mostly only one direction. I'll move the dough instead of the rolling pin. And at the first sign of any sticking at all, I'll rub a little bit more flour. Use as much of it as you need. This was made with bread flour, by the way. And I had never used bread flour before, in making puff pastry, and I think I like the results better. Usually I use pastry flour. So now we're going to trim it. I've got it out to a little bit bigger than we need it, and we want to trim this off on all four sides. And the reason for it is, besides getting it into the right shape, the right length, when you've been rolling this pastry, you've been sealing the edges. And what we want to happen when we cook this is that we want it to fluff up, we want it to puff up. And if it's sealed on the end, that will keep it from puffing. So we just cut the edges off to sort of free up those puffs. And you want to do that even if you're using grocery store puff pastry, because when you roll it out, you're sealing the edges. And this little trim is going to make a big difference in your finished product. And yes, that's big enough. As I say, it's closer to 7. That's okay. It's going to be very forgiving when you start working with it. If you have a pizza cutter, one of those little rolling cutters, that would work fine. Probably easier than this. But there we go. Now we're going to give it the final cut. I measure and mark. You know, I'm one of those people that when I cook, I often just eyeball quantities. I don't do that with puff pastry. There you go. So now we've got 2. Whoops. Let me give that another little cut. And I'll just push these off to the side while I cut the other 2. See how thin that is? And we could have got it even thinner, but this is thin enough. I'll cut the other 2 pieces and I'll be right back. And I'm looking at these now and they don't all look the same size. Really, I did cut them to exactly the same size, but as they sit, they draw up just a little bit. So I'm docking this right down the middle, and that's only because I want it not to rise so much right in the middle. And when that's done, I'm going to egg wash the whole thing. Egg washing the inside helps keep it crisp inside because you're using not a really liquid filling, but sort of liquid. And that could make it a little soggy inside. So I'm just going to run the egg wash over the whole thing here. I'll be back. And then I'm going to take my filling. Well, let me get another spoon here. So I'll take my filling and spread it evenly between, or share it evenly between the 4. And this is a good bit, and I may not use all of it just because I don't know how much it's going to cook out and spread. And I don't want it cooking out all over the place. So I'm just going to kind of make a judgment call here. I use almost all of it. There's about 1 tablespoonful left, and at the end I see I could have used it all because it didn't spread out all over the oven and run out of the pastries. So I'm going to do a simple fold here, pulling the 2 corners together. And you could pull the other 2 corners up too and do the same thing. I kind of want to see how this rises if I leave some of it out to the side, because as I said, this is the first time I've made this pastry with bread flour, and I want to see what kind of results I get. So I'm doing a simple fold corner to corner, and you want to really secure it in the middle so that it doesn't pull apart when it starts puffing. And that's another reason for the egg wash inside. Now my oven is preheated to 400 degrees. You can see I've got parchment here. If you don't have parchment, oil your pan and put a little cornmeal on it. This is going in the middle rack of the oven. I'll be back in 25 minutes. And this is what you have. and they're still really hot. I'll move them around so you can see them. I'm going to move these to a rack. I'll let them cool about 30 minutes because it's really hot. And you know, sometimes you just don't need words. I'm going to try this one, and I'm going to let you listen. Yep, that's exactly what I was hoping for. I hope you try these. I hope you like them. I hope you make your own puff pastry, and the link will be at the end of this video. Thank you for joining us. I hope to see you again tomorrow.